I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a series review. With only 2 episodes left in Season 1 of the Quantum Leap sequel series, I had genuinely hoped that episode 17 would finally be a legitimately good episode. Unfortunately, this was not the case. Episode 17 has Ben leap into a female flight stewardess in the 1970s aboard a plane that's been hijacked by terrorists. With the help of his disappointed fiancée and some little twerp, he manages to neutralize the threat. Then, with no crew left to pilot the airplane, random office guy person shows up as an additional hologram and helps Ben land the commercial aircraft safely. When the plane lands and Ben leaps, he arrives in the future, where it seems like there's been some type of nuclear disaster. Then, out of the shadows, an older, future version of random office guy person appears, and that's where the episode ends. As usual, I will discuss what I liked about this episode, and then what I didn't like. Number 1. The leap. The idea of a leap with a plane hijacking is overall a good one. It's a nice setup for some action and high stakes. While in some ways, the episode's leap is amongst one of the better leaps we've seen on this crappy show until now, as usual, the execution isn't great, and the episode as a whole still has many issues. Number 2. Action. I liked that at least there was a moment that Ben took charge and actually did something that was a bit more action-orientated. It's too bad that we don't see more moments like this from Ben on this show. Well, that was the good. Now let's talk about the bad. Number 1. Agenda. In this episode, Ben is a woman. Again. And you know what? I'm just going to flat out say it. This is bull. During the first 17 episodes of the original show, Sam leaped into a woman once. During the first 17 episodes of this show, Ben has already leaped into women 5 times. Statistically, every third leap, Ben is a woman. And for the most part, it doesn't usually even really serve the plot. On the original show, not only are all the female episodes tailored for stories unique to females, their entire execution is far more realistic. In every episode Sam leaps into a woman, he's annoyed by it, he feels uncomfortable, and he frequently complains about it throughout the episode. He has trouble wearing women's clothing and shoes, and meanwhile, you see Al smoking a cigar and even making fun of him at times, adding some much-needed humor to the entire situation. On the original show, even if the topic of a female episode is more serious, there's still always moments of levity and a tongue-in-cheek atmosphere. That, along with Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell's excellent performances, make it enjoyable to watch, especially when it's done in moderation. In contrast, on this show, when Ben leaps into a woman, he immediately feels right at home. He loves being a woman. For some reason, it seems to be a perfect fit for him, and he slips into this role so comfortably. And of course, every time he's a woman, a toxic male has to show up and disrespect him. Between that and all the emotional, arrogant girl bosses around him, and even random office guy person's entire existence, one thing is clear. This show frowns upon straight males in general, and even more so, straight Caucasian males. In regards to this episode, the agenda is especially frustrating, because story-wise, this was a perfect opportunity for Ben to leap into an action man on a hijacked plane and do some cool action scenes as a man, but nope. Even in the rare moment that he seemingly does something heroic, he has to wear a pink dress while doing it. And why is that? Well, you'll have to ask showrunner Martin Giro about that. Number 2. Plane landing. On the original show, Sam Beckett flies a jet, and while the idea is at least somewhat far-fetched, it's important to point out that Sam doesn't actually take off or land his jet. Basically, the writers of that episode were smart enough to understand that the viewers would only suspend disbelief up to a certain point, so they at least attempted to make it seem a bit more plausible, and while not perfect, I still think that the idea was handled pretty well overall. On the other hand, on this show, Ben lands a commercial airplane during an emergency situation, and I think this just may be a step too far. Even with random office guy person guiding him, it seems like too much suspension of disbelief is required here from the viewer. Perhaps if this episode was well written and actually told a good story like the original, I could let it slide. But it doesn't, so I can't. Number 3. Present day. Some of these unnecessary present-day scenes feel so generic and pointless. Why are these people standing around talking like they're on Criminal Minds or something? This isn't a cop show, it's a sci-fi adventure show. Every scene like this only hurts the story and exposes what a by-the-numbers basic show this is. Imagine this show had been on a hijacked plane without all this present-day nonsense. This difference alone would already make this episode's 5 times more suspenseful. I realize that over the past few episodes, the writers have tried to give the laboratory team more of a purpose, but at the end of the day, it still mostly feels like filler. Number 4, Traitor ZIGGY. I don't know how I feel about this stupid idea that came out of left field. What evidence do they really have that ZIGGY is an actual traitor? Also, let's even say that ZIGGY is a traitor. How can they just shut the entire system down with no real implications within a moment's notice? Also, if they did this whole leap without ZIGGY and they didn't even need him, why not just leave ZIGGY off forever and destroy him? And actually, if ZIGGY doesn't do anything that crucial, why was the system even online to begin with? Once again, this just seems like another hasty twist that they added to this season late in the game without actually thinking about it or building it up in a proper way. Number 5, Ben is whiny. Once again, Ben is sad because he trusted the mystery box leaper in the previous leap and it almost got him killed. And of course he has to whine about it to his disappointed fiancé as usual. Boo-hoo! I can't trust anybody. What am I gonna do? And after he stops believing in himself and in others, Ben's disappointed fiancé is there on cue to tell him what to do, because he's lost without her. As usual, she's a strong woman and he's a weak loser. She has to show him the way. Again. Number 6, the future. I don't necessarily mind if the show wants to explore a future apocalypse, but as most developments on this show, it's random, unearned, and lazy. This production has not properly re-established this IP in a satisfactory way, so why are they trying something so out of left field? If this show had 16 solid episodes until now, and then they wanted to explore the future, it could have been interesting, but much like this show, the entire setup feels both half-hearted and even somewhat desperate. Constantly throwing shit on the wall and hoping that it sticks is a poor approach to storytelling, and I find this strategy unacceptable. I almost feel like the showrunners are suddenly trying to turn this show into the 12 Monkeys series, which is a real mistake. It's not in the DNA of this series to really do futuristic apocalypse stories, and to be quite honest, the writers and producers of this show just don't have what it takes to pull it off. Number 7, plot hole. If Ben pushed the cart into first class and that's what got the mutiny on board started, why did the plane crash in the original timeline? I mean, if Ben wasn't originally there, he wouldn't have pushed the cart, and then the guy wouldn't have shot the hydraulics, fuel, or whatever that crap was. So wouldn't have the hijacking been successful? And then there wouldn't be any crash? It seems like a minor detail, but it really doesn't make much sense. If this was the only storytelling error, I could let it slide, but since the overall writing in this episode is so poor, it is more noticeable. Number 8, too many feelings. Why do Ben and his disappointed fiancé always have to talk about their feelings in these long and boring conversations? Nobody cares about this. Also, why are present-day people crying at the end of every episode too? It's so cheesy and annoying. I mean, I wish these characters would just shut the f*** up already. This show is such a downer sometimes. It's supposed to be Quantum Leap, but this is more like Quantum Leap for sensitive weirdos or something, and it's really starting to annoy me. Number 9, the music. This show has some of the most annoying and generic music I've ever heard on a sci-fi series. Every time Ben talks with his disappointed fiancé, there's always this miserable soap opera violin music in the background. Then, in present day, there's always this annoyingly slick type of cop show music playing in the background. And too often, I feel like the producers keep shoving this awful music in there just to cover up for their poor writing and the actors' poor acting capabilities. But it doesn't work. I can still tell that the writing and acting sucks. In the original series, the show had a theme song, and it would be incorporated into episodes with legitimate scores. For example, when Sam leaps into a boxer and he has a training sequence, the score is a type of hybrid between the original Quantum Leap theme music and a rocky vibe. Now that's pretty thoughtful, and even today, it sounds pretty cool. The music on the original helps set the tone and atmosphere, and it has these motifs that the viewer is already familiar with. On this show, the music just seems like something they downloaded from some generic library after the fact. It's not memorable, it doesn't feel customized, it doesn't really add anything to the show, and it really hurts it, actually. Overall, I would say that this episode wasn't the stinkiest we've seen, but it also wasn't even good enough to be considered mediocre. So if I had to give it a grade, I would say that this episode is somewhat stinky. Make of that what you will. Next week we're going to have the finale, and we'll have to see how this season ends. Showrunner Martin Giro promises that this will be a satisfying conclusion that answers all of the season's questions, but I doubt it. Perhaps this ending satisfies Giro himself because he's already collected his paycheck, and now he's going to spend his summer eating hors d'oeuvres. But if you're a fan of the original Quantum Leap, I'm not sure how satisfied you'll be, and that just may very well be the biggest problem with this show. Nevertheless, my invitation to showrunner Martin Giro and fellow producer Dean Drageris is still on the table. They are, of course, always welcome guests on this channel. Perhaps if they did make an appearance here, I could share my concerns with them. What did you think of episode 17 of Quantum Leap? Did you love it? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.